All right. Hey, my friend.
Hey, what's going on, Chrisi Hagan? How are
Okay. I kind of feel like we need to go, we're back.
you? Back in the house.
Oh my gosh, so excited. All right, let's tell them who we are. Who are you?
I am Marc Elias. I'm a realtor and I'm with Red One Realty. Who are you?
I am Chrisi Hagan with TVHBC, and we are with Keller Williams Classic Properties. And I'm so excited to be back on air with
Yeah.
one of my besties
Oh,
in
yeah.
the life and in the business here. So
It's nice to reconnect, and it's always good to confer with one another about happenings with clients and the market. Speaking of which, big shift in the market with NAR lawsuit. Tell us about what that is.
well, can I actually just read it straight from NAR?
Do you
Is that
think?
okay?
Yeah.
So let's set it up, and then we'll maybe unpeel this. So the case is this: there was a Sitzer Burnett in class action lawsuit that was filed in Missouri in the federal court by a group of home sellers in the state against NAR and other defendants that included some brokerages such as Anywhere, Berkshire Hathaway, Home Services, Keller Williams, and Remax. The plaintiffs claimed that the real estate commission rates were too high, buyers' representatives were paid too much, and NAR's, which is National Association of Realtors, Code of Ethics and the MLS Handbook, along with corporate defendant practices, led to inflated commission rates. So just going straight from it, we've got too high of prices, too much commission, and too much control per se is what the accusations were. And there has since been a settlement that it has been worked out, and of course the judges are still finishing up the ruling part, but that's where we stand.
Yeah. So I'll ask you, what is the difference you think between how those brokerages presented that information to those sellers versus the information that was presented to every other seller? What do you have any intuition about maybe how that was presented? Because commissions were always negotiable for sellers. They could always choose their commission. So that hasn't changed. Then what has?
Yes, I agree with you 100%. That has not changed. This has always been negotiable. So, what was put together by a group of sellers and, of course, attorneys that were involved with that presented the case as if it was not negotiable. So, I don't think that anything has changed from that realm. I'm here at a Keller Williams office, and Keller Williams is one of the named, and we absolutely would say everything's negotiable. It has been since I got into this business 9 years ago. And that doesn't change today, which is the beauty of it. So that impact on the seller is no different. But what it has done is opened up the conversation a bit more. And if somebody did not understand it, there's no missing it now with national news. So yeah, that has not changed.
Yeah. So in my experience, many buyers and sellers aren't quite clear even what this lawsuit is about and what actually changes. And so I'll just share with you from what I've learned and what I know in the field is
Mhm.
that there's more disclosure to the seller, and
Fair.
that they have to acknowledge that they have the choice to select commissions. Now, one thing about listing agent commission is there's always a built-in margin of what a listing agent is going to potentially make on a home. So you have two different listing agents. One says they'll flex on commission, the other doesn't. What do you think they're going to do when they flex on commission? They're going to decrease their marketing spend. It's just inevitable.
Right. You're going to get what you pay for.
So in some micro markets, particularly those in good schools, maybe that conversation might be more frequent in terms of flexing on commission for a listing agent. However, as a whole in Central Columbus, 91% of all transactions are a 6% 3 and 3. So, go deeper on that with me.
Yeah, so I think with that, and again, that's an average. That's not an assumption, and it's not a must-have. So that is an average. That's what sellers are choosing. But with that, I think it is. I look at it this way, and this is my description: is that it is a marketing expense. So just as when I list a home and you list a home, I know we do many of the similar things. There's a cost for professional photography. There's a cost for a home, cleaning or landscape, whatever. There's a marketing cost from me as a professional to get the most for the home. For the seller, that's part of their marketing costs that they have to determine. Do they want to provide that commission to the buyer's agent as part of their marketing costs to get more people in there and to have a broader scope of their home? Do they have to do it? Absolutely not. Will they have more people choosing to come? I absolutely believe so. And it's not as an agent that somebody's just a flat out not going to show it, but we can dive deeper into this, and I would have a follow-up question for you, but the buyer side. But quite honestly, if you have two homes in the same neighborhood with the similar square footage and bedrooms, and one of them is going to offer compensation to a buyer's agent and one is not, if a buyer is strapped in a market such as Columbus with escalating prices and covering appraisal gaps, that's going to make a difference if they're going to choose to move forward as a buyer to look at a house, because they may not have that money to pay in addition. So it's just an additional marketing cost from my perspective for the seller.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to focus on the seller side, I think that there'll be those kind of courageous buyers that do go directly to work with the seller. And I think the impact to the seller is they will be able to decrease their purchase price if they're paying no commission to a buyer's agent. That may be easier for appraisals to come down since the price is coming down. But then you have buyers working directly with sellers. And you know why, Chrissy? People don't represent themselves in court.
It does not end well.
Doesn't end well. So,
No.
I think there'll be some buyers that are going to learn very quickly the intricacies of getting a deal done, the steps required to go through the process, inspection, remedy, loan commitment, title search, etc. And I think what is lost sometimes is the part of the art of writing an offer, because you and I are in the market writing offers every week. There's nuances and characteristics that change week to week as you write an offer. So I think sellers are going to start to receive some more wacky type of offers of buyers that don't really know the micro market.
Yeah, and they're also not, they don't have the fiduciary duty to the seller. They are there solely for themselves and for the buying, but they don't know the contract. They don't understand deadlines. They don't understand their responsibilities necessarily. And I think that we're also going to see in those scenarios a seller who's going with an unrepresented buyer or a self-represented, for that example, we're going to see some of those transactions not making it all the way to closing. And that defies a lot. That's going to create a lot of issues for the seller. If they are on a deadline, if they're trying to get their next home, or if they're trying to move, or they need the money for downsizing or a family member going into care, whatever the case may be, if deadlines are falling apart, that has an impact on the seller.
Yeah, when deals fall apart, the home goes back on the market, and usually a home that goes back on the market may sit slightly longer as the market may interpret it as there is something wrong. So perhaps we might see an increase in days on market slightly, depending on the area. The other thing is, I think now sellers, when they work directly, if they were to work directly with a buyer who doesn't want to pay their own buyer's agent, they will have to get backups, and not just one backup, probably multiple backups, because listing agents know when working directly with a buyer, things get emotional and it's a higher likelihood things will fall out.
Yeah, absolutely. And if they, you have to think too on that. Is that price going to go down? I mean, I would question that in our market. I think in some markets across the country it will. But the house prices and the comps for the appraisals that are out there right now are, for the most part, based on a commission that is built in there. So as a seller, if they're going to, if you're just thinking from a buyer perspective right now, if a seller has a home listed, they're basing it on comps. They're not going to list it as, oh, hey, I'm not going to pay a buyer's outlet, so I'm going to go ahead and reduce the cost of my home
Correct.
by X%. So that buyer is paying it. And when they get multiple offers, which is most often the case here locally, those multiple offers are going to include, you don't know who you're up against, and it's going to include that commission going out to the buyer's agent. So I don't think that somebody deciding to skip a buyer's agent or a seller trying to not pay, they're going to get those offers with it written in.
Yeah, I think the scenario you created, you're accurate. Multiple offers. I don't think there will be any leverage for the buyer to say, bring down your price. In instances without multiple offers, I do think buyers that are working directly with sellers will use that as a leverage stick to say, hey, you're not paying 3%. Even still, it doesn't matter what price a contract is at. If it doesn't go through, none of it matters. So let's see, any other impacts to the seller? More frustration. When working directly with the market without an agent, there's no buffer. And I think sellers will start to see, as they work either directly with buyers, well, let's use that scenario. As they work directly with buyers, I would assert the process will probably be a little bit more stressful in those situations.
Yeah, absolutely it will. Definitely be more stressful when you don't have that representation on both sides. You've got two professionals, like you mentioned, like thinking of it in a law case, for example. If you have two attorneys in court, it goes a lot smoother than two pro se or an attorney and a pro se, right? So it would be similar to that. But I think additionally, just what does it mean to somebody who is watching this, whether they're watching it on, a video or listening on a podcast? Where does this come into play? So this conversation with the seller is happening at the time that we are getting an exclusive right to sell contract between the seller and the realtor. So that conversation is there. That's when it's negotiable. That's when it's determined. And we determine what that percentage is going to be on both sides. But then additionally, this percent is typically right now up until at this point, August, who knows if that will change. But it's listed in the MLS, right? So when we enter a home into the MLS, we say what that buyer's agent will get. That's essentially what's changing here. The negotiable exclusive right to sell is not changing. It's the same, but it just will no longer be openly disclosed in an MLS listing so that it's known what that is. Where will it go? Still kind of being determined, but it can be written off MLS. It could be on social media. It could be a conversation between agents. Seems kind of backwards to me that you're removing some disclosure there, but at any rate, it still absolutely can happen. I do want to make that clear to any listeners out there.
Yeah. So agents can't in the MLS specify the buyer broker commission, right?
Correct.
And as a result, offers that are being written by buyer brokers naturally will have a 3% ask in, which means if a seller is resistant to that, you're going to have negotiations on commission pretty aggressively. And what would be the impact to the seller when upfront? Well, I think the impact is more to the agent potentially. Could even be to the seller because the purchase price of the home is also considered when they're negotiating commission. So let's talk about the impact to the buyer. So NAR lawsuit, seller can choose, as they always have. They're not going to pay buyer broker commission. Buyers are stuck with it. Talk about the impact with buyers.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, it's a negotiation business. We don't have a flat price on anything. So they would be coming into, well, actually the first most important, I want to start back there, I'm going to step back a step, is when they want to go see a house. We still want to show it. We're thrilled to show them a home. That's what we're in. That's the business we're in. However, before they can step foot in a home and before we are allowed to show them the house, we have to have a buyer's agreement signed. So that is going to be a real big difference for some agents. Some agents, not a difference at all. But for a buyer, just knowing that and having that understanding, I think is important from the get-go, to know that they're going to have to sign that agreement before. Now, do know, I will throw out there though, right, Mark, that it can be a long-term agreement with an agent who you interviewed and you've chosen, or it could be a one-time for one house.
Yeah, that's right. What have you previously been using buyer agreements in your business?
Yes, I'm thankful. There's a lot of people that are pretty concerned right now. It's uncomfortable to them. But yes, I have. That being said, everybody does run their business differently, and I respect that. I don't have a lot of people that are completely unknowns. A lot of my business happens to be people that already know me. It's a natural conversation. When they reach out to want to look for houses, we sign an agreement and we move forward. It's going to be a new conversation. And I think it's just like you go to the dentist and they talk to you about the importance of brushing your teeth and coming back every 6 months, right? So it's going to be the same thing. If you want to look at a house, it's important. We sign this, let's go do it.
Yeah. Okay. So impact the buyer.
Yeah.
Buyer needs to sign that agreement before seeing any home as established by the National Association of Realtors. Now they've signed the agreement. What else is the impact potentially financially to the buyer of some of this lawsuit?
Yeah, so they're going to need to understand that it will be a unique situation potentially with each of the homes that they choose to go see. So when they look at one home versus one next door, one of them may offer compensation, whatever that percentage may be, to their buyer's agent for them to be paid. As much as we love our buyers, we do have to put food on the table at night. So some of those buyers may be offering that, and then the next one very well may not. So they need to have a very clear understanding, as they always have, that they may be financially responsible for paying that. So that's when that negotiation is going to come in. If it's a flat percentage, if it's whatever it looks like, don't know. That's negotiable again. But they have to understand that that financial cost becomes part of their budget. So if they only had X amount of money to bring to closing table and then they're tapped out, that might have to include a compensation.
Yeah. You know what's crazy is, since buyer's agents, when we show a home, won't know what the seller is offering in terms of buyer broker commission, we now have buyers that want to see homes, but they have a budget in terms of what they could pay their buyer broker in the instance that they may have to. How would an agent discern what homes to show if you can't filter on them to fit the buyer's profile? Which means buyer's agents will be showing homes that potentially don't fit the buyer's financial profile if, for instance, they're on the hook to pay, which means buyers are seeing homes that actually aren't a fit that they can't afford, which means unhappy buyers. There are going to be more frustrated buyers that see homes they love that they can't actually afford in instances that sellers are not paying their buyer broker.
Right. So, and that's where interviewing your agent on both the buyer and seller side and knowing that you have somebody doing due diligence is important. But with that being said, everybody can't have all of the information all of the time. So it will certainly be our jobs, and you and I will excel at showing people homes that we can get the information on. But yeah, there's going to be times we're not going to be able to get a hold of every agent. When you want to see a house, hey, I'm in the neighborhood, can we pop into 123 Main Street? We may not be able to get a hold of that agent and find out those details, and they fall in love. It might become a problem if they want to purchase it and then financially they can't cover that. So yes, it could be some unnecessary showings, which is also not only inconvenience to the buyer, but now the seller has had to pack up and take, little Bobby and Susie and Fido out of the house. And that isn't a real valid buyer. So yeah.
Yeah,
Crazy.
that's a great point, is that they're gonna be inconvenienced allowing buyers in their home that didn't know that they can't afford the home because they're on the hook for a buyer broker commission. So, Chrissy, when I do my consultation with new clients, which I always do, every buyer, always meet with them either via Zoom or in person. We talk about the 4 money buckets. First is down payment. closing costs, inspection fees, and potentially an appraisal gap commitment, which is a new phenomenon in our market, in our local market, over the last, call it 2, maybe 3 years. The fifth bucket of money will now be paying their own buyer broker. It's an extraordinary amount of money that probably first-time home buyers are going to be the most challenged, which means they will reside in either their they'll reside in their rentals,
which we are trying to get away from being a rental society. But yeah, that's yes.
Yeah. And rental prices are likely to go up as a result of particular ages. Those management companies knowing that particular aged buyers, those first-time home buyers, are less likely to be able to afford, which means the rental demand will go up. As a result, rental prices are bound to go up.
Well, and I don't think with all of this, Mark, that everything has clearly been completely thought through, I will say with respect. But I think that some things will continue to evolve. For example, that VA buyer can't pay for certain things and they're not allowed to the way that laws are currently written. There's also some stipulations within, I believe, FHA buyers. So Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, or did I get that right? Yeah, I got it backwards. No, I got it right. But that, and then the VA loan, some things are going to absolutely have to be written in to accommodate in the loan process, that commissions perhaps to be written into them. There's gonna have to be some kind of change, because yes, it's not, I just think for your children, my grandchildren, that I want them to be able to own a home. And this just doesn't seem like the answer to make that happen. So yeah, there's gonna have to be some changes with law and lending.
Yeah. So let's run that through. If a lender then allows a buyer to finance the commission that they may owe their buyer broker, then they'll be paying interest for the life of the loan in order to have paid their agent. And very likely over a 30-year amortization table, in interest, they'd be paying a multiple of what they would, they'd be paying a multiple of what they're paying their agent in commission.
Yeah. Ouch. Ouch. So, yeah, the only thing I would maybe in that scenario, and that wouldn't be the first preference I would want to suggest to somebody, but if that's their mechanism to get into a home, it's definitely a viable option. But I would think it would be a very wise decision that instead of paying that once a month mortgage, maybe break it down and pay every 2 weeks to have a biweekly. Therefore, you're paying one extra payment a year. You're reducing the life of your loan, and you're reducing some of that future commission, or not, excuse me, commission, but interest on that added. So maybe a small way to not pay money up front, but maybe pay off your loan a little bit quicker to reduce that long-term debt might be a win-win.
Yeah. And then when the loan amount goes up, there's something called debt to income, is which a lender looks for, one of the 5 financial attributes that they look at whether to qualify you for a loan. As you assume a larger loan, that changes some of the financial qualifications that you'll have to go through as a buyer, speaking of buyers. And so this may disqualify some buyers from financing or change their financing type. Now, why is that relevant? In a competitive market, you have cash, always king. Conventional FHA, VA, and USDA. Fact of the matter is, sellers are always a little bit apprehensive to go with a federally backed loan such as FHA, VA, and USDA because of the appraisal requirements. It's a far longer list that the bank goes through when they appraise the property versus a conventional loan or cash in which there is no appraisal. Some buyers may be pushed to this side of the fence. Why is that relevant? Because this may have them be less likely to have their offer accepted by the seller as a result of their loan type. Does that make sense?
It does, and I agree that that is the perception, but we're going to have to do a follow-up episode and dive deeper into that VA, because I'm going to fight for them all the time, and they're actually one of the strongest buyers that you can have, but there is a misconception for sure.
Yes, interesting. Well, the reality is, as you and I know, is that the VA loan is one of the most secure loans as a result of the stringent qualifications that go with it up front. Sellers don't have that point of view.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a battle. I know we both win it for a lot of our clients every day. But yes, if we're just talking about a perception. Marc, I want to go a little bit deeper though on something else with the buyer.
Mhm.
There, think about right now. I'm very clear, and I know you are as well. We have clients that look on the daily. The number one search out there engine for home starts with a Z, right? Ends with an illo. So anyway, there's Realtor.com, Trulia, like all these different companies, and it's window shopping, and it can really be a fun portal to get into this world of real estate and what do they want to potentially buy. So now if you think about it, if they're going in there and they're just clicking, show me a home, they're going to end up today with Bobby, tomorrow with Susie, then Jimmy, then Johnny. Like, it's going to be insane. Do they want to have this potential buyer's agreement on every single house every day with someone different?
Yeah,
I wouldn't.
that's a good point. There will be some buyers that have commitment fears and will have to may choose to sign a one house agreement with every agent they interact with. I mean, honestly, though, Chrissy, I have in my career of 150 transactions or more, have had maybe less than on one hand buyers that didn't want to commit
Yeah.
to receiving my services and guidance. I know you and I have a similar experience.
Yeah, we do. And I think that goes back to what you and I were saying earlier is the importance. Like, just interview somebody, find someone. Maybe it's that person at that first house. Maybe it's somebody who you've loved their social media marketing. Maybe you love this conversation, like whatever it may be, interview them and then use their system, use their portal, use their search for you. Or if you find that house on one of those other common portals that are out there, nobody's going to argue that they're popular. But call the person who's fighting for you and have them do that research, because showing up and signing a document before you can step foot in a door every single time, I would envision being a frustration.
So let's talk about the impact to agents.
Yeah.
So we talked about impact to sellers as a result of this lawsuit. Buyers. Next is agents. So now we are going to be in a situation having conversations about disclosing commissions to sellers. If you did that correct over the years, none of that changes. What is the impact to agents now? Well, we talked about one, listing agents maybe having to deal directly with the market. That's a very difficult transaction, very emotional. What other impacts to the agent?
Well, it's kind of dual with the agent and the seller, but literally dual. That will bring about that whole dual agency a lot more, which some agents are fine with. Some agents shy away from it and prefer not. And the same goes with sellers. Some are okay and some are not. If a seller does not want you representing that buyer, then that buyer's, out there and all alone. So from an agent perspective, just really defining what our seller wants, but also what do we feel comfortable with when it comes to a potential dual agency. But it's just really honing our skills and becoming better in our conversations with explaining what the value is to marketing, whether somebody chooses or not. But I think value propositions, we hear about it all the time. You and I go to a lot of CE and classes and Zooms and in person and whatnot. But really being able to message our value proposition to the market and the buyer and the seller.
Sure. I think there'll also be an increase in brokerages, these chop shop brokerages that put the property on the MLS and do nothing else for $500. And I think there may be instances you have a seller that may win on that, but it's fairly infrequent because the amount of other marketing that needs to take place to sell the home is comprehensive. Most sellers don't either have the acumen or the time to do it. I do believe there'll be an increase in these chop shop brokerages As we've learned, Chrissy, these type of brokerages, they don't negotiate on your behalf. Often it's left to the seller, which I don't think ultimately the seller will be in the best position to get the most amount of money if in fact that is their goal. So I do see that occurring. And I also do see the polar opposite, more premium based brokers that are creating more value and making it well worth the while of the seller to commit to 6% and in some instances 7%.
Yeah, and again, it's all negotiable. So it could be any number that we could plug in there. But yes, that conversation. And I think it's an 80-20, right? So in the Columbus MLS, the number varies. So I don't know. It could be 9,000, it could be 9,500, 10,000, whatever. Gosh, when I got into real estate about 9 years ago, I think there was maybe 6,000 realtors. So it's definitely escalated. But of all of those, and then we have what, 2,500 homes available on a given day for about 10,000 people to sell. Clearly, everybody's not selling. So I think what we're going to see is an elevation of the agent, of the conversation, of the marketing, of the value proposition. And you have 20% of the agents in Columbus doing 80% of the business. So yeah, I'm pretty happy to see some leveling up happen, and those like yourself and your team and myself, like we are here. And we will continue to have those conversations, but the ones who weren't, I think we'll see a reduction.
Yeah, it's necessary that agents leave this occupation. It's a very low barrier of entry to become an agent. You take a class of which it provides you no real guidance on how to be an agent. You go into the field, maybe sell your house and a best friend's house, end up botching that, really realizing how much emotional energy it takes, and you maintain a license. There are 10,000 people in Ohio that have a license. I'm looking forward to many of those folks dropping out. Why? Not because I may make more money, because reputation. Politicians, realtors, used car salesmen, the lowest trust ranking. You can Google it. I would assert losing those agents that truly don't do this full time and do many transactions a year. It's a good thing for reputation.
100% agree. Yep. Agents who are doing this with the intent of helping the industry, helping homeowners, helping people make their future memories and where they're going to grow their families or downsize to their next move. If you're doing it with all of the knowledge and skill, it's just like any other professional somebody has in their life. When it comes time to do their taxes, they're gonna turn it over to their accountant. You want somebody who is going to protect you and know and understand and get the most for you. So yeah, the leveling it up and improving the overall appearance at our industry, I would think, whether I agree with the case or not, and some of the disclosures or not, whatever it is, doesn't matter. I do like that it has leveled up for us and is helping to improve the overall image by those who are doing the best going forward. Yeah.
So in
Exciting.
closing, what's your opinion? Biggest impact from the NAR lawsuit starting in July, sellers, buyers, or agents? What's the biggest impact in your opinion?
Buyers.
100% buyers. All right, folks. Well, that is a quick recap and exploration of the impacts of the NAR lawsuit. Lots to come. There is bound to be lots of changes as a result of the impact, creating inadvertent things that are less desired by buyers and sellers. So
100%.
We'll see.
Marc,
Chrisi Hagan, good seeing you.
we're back. All right, friend. Thanks so much. I'll meet you back here on air.
All right.
Bye-bye.